Last week, the House Intelligence Committee, that's conducting its own investigation of Trump and Russia in the 2016 election, sent a subpoena to a community radio host named Randy Credico. Now, I've known Randy for the better part of 20 years, and I know him as a dedicated activist against the very harsh Rockefeller drug laws in New York City and against racial injustice. He's an anti-war activist, and he spent a lot of time in the streets protesting Reagan's dirty wars in Central America, for instance. Randy's also a stand-up comedian, and back in the 1980s, he sort of found himself at a crossroads. Randy was a rising star in the comedy scene. He was political, but he also had a kind of broad appeal because he was sort of a great impressionist. Randy got an invitation to appear on what was the single most important venue for stand-up comics at the time, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
From Hollywood, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. This is Ed McMahon along with Doc Severs.
Randy ended up going on that show, and he did a radical political routine. And when the routine was done, Johnny Carson did not invite him to the couch, which was a sign that you had made it if Johnny said, hey, come over to the couch. And Randy was never invited back on The Tonight Show again. Here's a clip from that Tonight Show routine from the documentary about Randy's life, which is called 60 Spins Around the Sun.
He's a young comedian. This is his first appearance on national television. Works in Hollywood out here at the Improvisation. And would you welcome him, please? Randy Credico. Randy?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Johnny. And, what a great introduction. As he said, I do political impressions. And
I'm doing great. You know, I'm doing the Reagan, Jesse Jackson, and Ted Kennedy and all this. And there was a point where Freddie de Cordova said, this guy's great, right? He's coming back. I thought that I would get the chair. I was doing that well. There was a point where I was going to get the chair. I was doing very well.
What did you say that rubbed them the wrong way?
There's a couple of things.
Like what?
Jane Kirkpatrick, she is the UN ambassador, and she says a lot of interesting things. As a matter of fact, if you examine some of those statements, you got to ask yourself seriously, did Eva Braun die in that bunker in 1945?
Somebody said, whatever you don't do Carson, I did like a little bit of Carson as well.
As a matter of fact, he is the Tommy Newsom of the political scene, I would say. Ed?
That sealed my fate. No chair.
Randy Credico. Good stuff.
After this appearance on The Tonight Show, Randy Credico's career went downhill, and it never quite recovered. He poured himself into activism, and he's been very open about pouring himself into alcohol and drugs and having problems in his relationships. Believe me, he's a surreal character, and you should check out that documentary about his life. Anyway, over the past year, Randy has been hosting a show on Pacifica radio station WBAI in New York. It's called Live on the Fly with Randy Credico. And his show gained somewhat of an international audience when Randy did a 12-part series on WikiLeaks and its founder, Julian Assange. Randy did several interviews with Assange. He interviewed Assange's mother, and he interviewed people that have been working with Assange. And there's no doubt Randy is a passionate supporter and advocate for Julian Assange. Which brings us back to the subpoena that Randy received that, by the way, was signed by the chair of the Intelligence Committee, Republican Devin Nunes. And here's what this is about. Randy had former Trump advisor and still apparently Trump close friend Roger Stone on his radio series on Julian Assange. Roger Stone, of course, was one of Nixon's henchmen, and he is more famous in the current times for seeming to know ahead of time that WikiLeaks was going to be releasing emails about Hillary Clinton and John Podesta's emails and the DNC communications. Roger Stone has a huge mouth, and he openly bragged that he had this source close to WikiLeaks that was feeding him this information in advance. And then when Stone recently appeared himself before the House committee, he reportedly told the Congress members on that committee that Randy Credico was in fact his secret source that was giving him information from Julian Assange. And then Randy got hit with this subpoena. So to discuss this really bizarre, sordid tale is the man with the subpoena in his hand, Randy Credico. Randy, welcome to Intercepted.
Jeremy, it's great to be here. So, finally, I've been trying to get on this show for a long time.
And you and I have known each other for probably the better part of 20 years. Since you went to
Albany with me in 1999.
I was a young reporter working for Amy Goodman and WBAI, and my first introduction to you, you were very close to the great radical lawyer, the late William Kunstler.
Right. I was running his fund at that time.
You were running the Kunstler Fund.
Moses Kunstler Fund for Racial Justice, and our key project at that time was the repeal of the Rockefeller drug laws. And you went up there in the early days. You and Robert Knight from WBAI actually went up there, and we had a huge rally.
Right. And for people that don't remember this, the Rockefeller drug laws are some of the harshest prison sentences doled out against nonviolent offenders, including first-time offenders for minor possession charges, basically.
Right.
And for people that don't know Randy Credico, if you had a loved one incarcerated under the Rockefeller drug laws, you absolutely knew Randy. He knew all of these women whose husbands, whose sons, whose family members were locked up under these, and he would organize buses of family members and activists and others to go to Albany to protest against the Rockefeller drug laws.
Yeah, we started out May 8th, 1998 in front of Rockefeller Center with about 15 family members of those who were incarcerated and kids whose mothers were doing, 20 years in prison that grew up without their mothers.
I didn't get help from anyone until I met Randy Credico.
This is Regina Stevens, her son, under the Rockefeller drug laws. Muscular dystrophy, full-blown muscular dystrophy, did 10 years in a maximum security prison.
They have to dress him, put him on the toilet, take him off the toilet. They have to turn him every 2 hours while he sleeps. He's no threat to anyone.
And it started out there on the 25-year anniversary of the Rockefeller drug laws, and we were there for the next 6-7 years until they were modified. And they were changed that year. They were changed again, not enough to my satisfaction, but they made it retroactive. So a lot of people who were still behind bars were able to get some relief.
Okay, let's transition now to talking about WikiLeaks. So let's start at the beginning. You did was it a 12-part series?
Yes, it started out as this is April 2nd. Assange had called me
April
up to
2nd
do my
of
show. 2017. 2017. That's this year. Yes, okay. I did it this year. I had him on the show August 26th, something like that, of 2016. I had him on along with Cindy Sheehan. And then I didn't get him back on for 7 months. He finally called me up. And said, I'd like to do the show. The most accurate source in news, Julian Assange. Welcome back to the show, Julian.
G'day, Randy.
It's great to have you back on. We did that 10 weeks. And then the following week, I began building a series. I didn't know how long it was going to go, and it went right up to his 5-year anniversary inside the Ecuadorian embassy, which was, I think, June 17.
And what was the point of the series?
Well, the point of the series was called Julian Assange Countdown to Freedom. It was a hook. The reason why I continued with it was the crowd was growing. I was getting this international audience of people from Pakistan, from Russia. I shouldn't say that, but,
And you were interviewing...
I was interviewing everybody. I was interviewing people like William Binney and Ray McGovern, and then his mother came on at the very end. She would only do my show because she listened to it for 7 or 8 weeks, and she finally came out of the woodwork and said, I trust you. I'll do your show. And she did it twice. I know that for a mother to be separated from her son like this, it must be grueling and a difficult road to hoe on a daily basis.
It is. It's difficult for both of us and other members of the family, Randy. I don't think it's very hard to put into words this experience that we're going through over the last 7 years.
He came on at the very end. I really started getting into it once I got to know the story here about WikiLeaks. And so that show just took off. Roger Stone was on one of those first 10.
Why?
Assange, because he was such a supporter of WikiLeaks. Every week I'm trying to juggle a show, right? Craig Murray was on 3 or 4 times. Craig Murray, the former ambassador to Uzbekistan.
British ambassador.
And he's made some statements out there that are controversial, but a very smart guy. Really, this guy, former...
Craig Murray, just to be clear, Craig Murray claims that he was the intermediary between WikiLeaks on the one hand and whoever it was. Their line is that whoever it was that leaked the DNC emails gave them to Craig Murray, and Murray then gave them to WikiLeaks, and that it wasn't about Russia at all.
I heard that. I heard him say that, but I never brought that up during the series. He went...
Great journalism there, Randy.
No, I didn't. No, I really did not, because I'm sure he didn't want to talk about that. But he did talk about everything else. He talked about Assange, his association with Assange. It's all there. I had him on like 3 times.
When did you receive a subpoena from the House Intelligence Committee?
Just last week. when I got back from London. I got the letter on November 9th. I went to London on the 11th and 12th, all the way to the 17th, and came back.
What were you doing in London?
I was covering a hearing at the High Court, trying to get documents between the Crown Prosecutor Services and the Swedish prosecutor that took place that they had hidden from an Italian journalist that showed communications that they kept the Swedish prosecutor from interviewing Julian Assange because it might exonerate him early. They didn't want them in London to interview him because they would lose their pretext to keep him there.
This is on the allegations that Julian sexually assaulted women in Sweden.
And they could have come in and they could have had that interview, but they did not want. And so that was the basis of that. They're trying to get documents that would prove that they colluded with the SPA, the Swedish prosecutor.
This was roughly a month ago. Did you meet with Julian while you were there?
Yes. That's already public, so I can say that. Twice I met with him.
Okay. When you got this subpoena, what did the subpoena say that they wanted to question you in connection to?
Well, the first, I sent you the letter. There's a huge letter by them. I understand it, but it was about Russiagate. I mean, it doesn't say Russiagate. Anything, all matters Russia and the involvement with the 2016 election and preserve documents, preserve this, preserve that. And so just before deadline, my lawyer, Marty Stoller, sent them an email saying that I refused to voluntarily give them testimony. So a week later, lo and behold, there is a subpoena to show up on the 15th, the last day before they go to break the following day, or that day.
Are you going to show up?
I don't know. I haven't, we don't know. I have like 4 or 5 lawyers right now that are working on this, and maybe one big organization, civil rights organization, still kind of building. So Marty's still the lead lawyer on it. I'm getting advice from others as to what to do on this date.
Okay. Now, clearly one of the events that precipitated, if not caused you to be hit with this subpoena is that Roger Stone gave your name up to the committee and said, this person that I've been talking about, tweeting about my secret squirrel into Julian Assange's world and how I knew that things were going to be coming out was Randy Credico, right?
I think that's the reason why, but I haven't seen anybody's testimony. I don't know. That could be what they put out, they leaked out there, but maybe it's something else. Maybe they want to have information with my source, Julian Assange.
Hold on. Let's get to that in a second. Let's just talk about Roger Stone for a moment. Roger Stone, then, when it came out and people started saying, oh, this journalist / comedian, Randy Credico, was Roger Stone's source, then reporters who had been covering this got text messages from Roger Stone saying, I'm sorry that I lied to you. I was trying to protect my source, Randy Credico. Is Roger Stone telling the truth when he says that you were his conduit to Julian Assange?
I'm not at liberty to say exactly what Roger Stone did, other than what he has said on my radio show at this point.
Which
I can't conclusively say. He's on my radio show many times. He got me Gary Johnson on my radio show. He talked to my radio show.
The Libertarian candidate.
The Libertarian candidate. And like I said, he'd been on my show. Got a lot of heat for this. I had him on. This goes way back to when I had the morning show before David Rothenberg on Saturdays. I had him on. I had Wayne Barrett.
Okay, people can look at that archive, but
yes.
How about this question? Is Roger Stone being truthful when he says that you were his conduit to advance information from WikiLeaks?
This is the kind of question I'm going to get next week.
Well, this is a practice run.
Yes, well, this practice run is, I have to say, I stand on my First Amendment grounds or I stand on my Fifth Amendment rights here.
So you're making me play the role of Adam Schiff?
Yes, you're Adam Schiff.
Okay. Did you, would you have had access to advance information to even give Roger Stone?
Do you think I could? Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Would you trust me with any, you've known me and you know my reputation, would you trust me with information?
No.
Okay.
Well, it depends. If it was information strategizing on how to get people out of prison who are there for totally outrageous first-time drug possession, yeah, I would trust you to have a secret strategy meeting among activists for how are we going to do this. I would not trust you with, hey, by the way, we've got this guy and his name is so-and-so and he's going to give us secret information. No, I would not tell you that.
I think
But I want you to answer that question.
I think you can come up with some kind of conclusion if you were to look through all of the dates and go through all of the material, the answer to that question. But the fact of the matter is, since I am unable to talk about my communication with Roger Stone and Julian Assange other than our conversation, this is by my lawyer. I asked him, if you ask me that question, what can I say? He says, you can't say anything.
Okay. Has your lawyer been also sending out your tweets, like the president?
Look at my tweets. Look at Roger Stone's tweets. I mean,
I'm going to look at your tweets. June 17th, 2016, you tweeted, Assange to drop coup de grace hammer on career criminal Clinton. How did you know that?
I said that?
Yeah.
What day was that?
June 17th, 2016.
June 17th. Well, that was something that I would just say. When did it come out?
Oh,
that was based on his tweets. That was based on his tweets. Okay? He's the one that said that she was going to jail. He had enough material. Just take a look at his tweets. Mine are based back then on his tweets. So I did not even know Assange on June 17th.
So June 17th, you tweeted that. July 22nd at 10:30 in the morning,
must have been drinking
WikiLeaks
back
begins.
then.
You must have been drinking. WikiLeaks begins to release tens of thousands of DNC
Well, they
emails.
probably had already done that, right?
So did you know anything about this in advance?
How would I know that? How would I know about that? That's that there, the June 7th. So that's even news to me that I put that out. Must have been one of my drinking benches. But if you take a look at his tweets prior to that I would extrapolate based on his tweets what was coming out.
On June 17th, 2016, had you ever had any communication with Julian Assange?
No.
So you were not in touch with Assange?
No, I had him on my show August 25th.
Okay. So clearly what you're saying then is that it's safe to say June 17, 2016, you had no foreknowledge of anything WikiLeaks was going to be doing.
When did they come out?
July 22nd, 2016, a month later.
They did. Mm-hmm. Nothing came out by them. So that's very mysterious to me that I would have that I would put that out. Then why would they even need to go to Roger Stone when I predicted it before him?
Well,
maybe he was my back channel.
I know at a minimum
maybe
that
Stone was my back channel.
Maybe Stone was yours. I know at that point already that it had been clear that Assange was going to be releasing documents about Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure that we knew anything specific. You tweeted that 2 days after WikiLeaks had already started releasing information. So when you said Assange to drop coup de grace hammer on career criminal Clinton, what you're saying is that they had just published this stuff and you were saying this.
I make wild tweets, okay? Mine are as irresponsible as the president sometime and Roger Stone. Depends on what time of the morning it is.
So it's clear then, and you've stated clearly, you wouldn't have had any foreknowledge. You hadn't yet met
June
or communicated
17th,
with them.
all I can say is that my conversations off the radio show with Julian Assange, I'm at liberty to talk about. That tweet obviously came after what he had put out.
Right. When did you first communicate with Julian Assange?
On August 26th by phone on my radio show. On my radio show.
So, and that was the first communication you ever had with him?
Any direct communication was on my radio show.
Okay.
And
And when did you first meet Julian Assange? In
face
person?
to face?
Yes. Pretty sure it's a matter of public record.
I think it's September 6th. September 6th, was that it? Something like that.
So September 6th, 2016, you were in London and you met with Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy.
Yes. Very expensive going to Harrods to have lunch.
I've also been to that embassy. I haven't gotten my subpoena yet, but I've gone in to meet
a lot of
with
people
Julian
have.
Assange.
Fewer now.
Yeah. Sean Hannity's been in there also.
Yes. It's already public knowledge that I was there on September 6th. And plus, they have photos outside. There were two people from Catalan.
Well, they also have your photo that was taken outside of the embassy.
That's my photo. That's a selfie.
Yeah, I got it.
All right?
Yeah. So
they have that photo, but don't they have their own photos?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, they have their police presence out there. It's under constant surveillance.
You see who's behind me in that photo with the earpiece?
Who is that?
Who knows? Yeah. He was just there all day long doing nothing.
What I'm trying to get to here, and I understand that you're under subpoena. This isn't a light matter. I mean, you are under subpoena. I'm
going to be surprised with things like that you just surprised me with.
You better get your ducks in a row if you are actually going to talk to that committee. They're going to go through your entire timeline.
My entire life.
Yeah.
But
here's the most important.
I have met with the guy 3 times. I said that. Yes, with Mr. Assange. I consider him a friend. I consider him now I really got to like him. I know he's controversial. People on both sides, on the left and right, large elements who don't like him.
To me, there are 2 very relevant questions to ask you regarding this. Just specifically. One is Roger Stone being truthful when he describes you as his source?
I can't characterize Roger Stone's. I can't talk about Roger Stone's testimony because I don't know what it is.
You wrote to me and said he's a fucking liar.
I did?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he in the past has lied about me. He said that I was the guy who called up Elliot Spitzer's father at 3 o'clock in the morning in 2007. Of course, that was proven to be wrong. So I'm saying he has lied in the past. I don't know what his testimony. I haven't seen his testimony.
No, not his testimony, Randy. What he said after his testimony, that he's saying, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to snitch Randy out, but guys, he's my source."
That's what he said.
Yeah,
this is going to have a beautiful ending. This story here.
What do you mean?
Okay, this story is going to have a beautiful ending. I cannot discuss here. I'd like to say conclusively, but I'm unable to at the behest of my attorneys. And my lawyers just take the Fifth Amendment. I can only take that if I take it now.
Yeah, I get it, and I respect that. I mean, I'll just make my own comment about this then, which is that the way I see this, even if you knew that WikiLeaks was going to be releasing more emails, how on earth is that criminal? I guarantee you that there are many journalists around the world who did have advanced knowledge that WikiLeaks was going to publish things. And my point is, so what?
Right. I'm sure a lot did.
The issue is, were you being used as a back channel to Trump?
You know, let's take in the case of Stefano Marizzi, who has worked with Glenn Greenwald and has worked with Snowden. And
Talk about the Italian journalist.
Yes, a very close friend of mine. Now, she probably gets advance information before it's released.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if you're working in a journalistic capacity and someone says, hey, this thing is coming down, it's going to be published on this date, be on the lookout for it. I get messages like that all the time from a variety of actors in all these stories. The question, though, that I think is different than that is, did you cross a line, a journalistic line, because you are claiming First Amendment protection as a journalist in some of this, where you then are knowingly giving information to someone who's in direct contact with Donald Trump about emails that are going to be...
I love WikiLeaks.
Right. That are going to be coming out. That's the issue, is not whether or not you as a journalist got it. It's that did you knowingly give it to someone who you reasonably could assume would tell the president?
Here's what I'd like to know. If Roger Stone doesn't tweet that out, would Julian Assange not put the stuff out? All right? Was that going to come no matter who knew about it?
No, of course it was going to come. But the point, and I think this is why they're looking at it, is because they're up this whole collusion thing.
Right.
And their assumption, which has not been proven on a technical level, is that WikiLeaks knowingly was disseminating emails that had been obtained by Russian hackers. And so the point they're getting at is, if Roger Stone had advanced knowledge of something that was essentially a Kremlin psyop to try to tilt the election, then that would be relevant to this investigation. That's the point they're making.
Right, right. Well, let them prove that point. They have to prove that point. And I'm just telling you, right now, unfortunately, I am not at liberty, and I think I told you this coming in, I'm not at liberty to talk about any conversations I had with Roger Stone or with Julian Assange outside of our radio show, which is public.
Okay. What is your...
Wouldn't you be doing the same thing?
I wouldn't be sitting here being interviewed by me.
Right. I mean, you're tough. You're tougher than Chuck Todd. No, I'm kidding.
Whoa,
I'm joking.
That's
no.
really low, man.
No,
and
I'm
not
joking.
difficult to
You are
achieve.
tougher than Mike Wallace,
Okay.
all right?
All right.
You're tougher than Mike Wallace, all right?
Given that you've spent all this time interviewing Assange and supporters of WikiLeaks and family members of Julian Assange, what is your assessment of this entire Russia investigation into Donald Trump as it relates to WikiLeaks?
Well, let me just say this about Donald Trump. I do not like Donald Trump. I have been against Donald Trump way back with the Central Park joggers. I despise him, and I would do nothing to facilitate his victory. And I did not. Look, it was a sad day for me.
So what
I was so depressed. But I was going to be depressed if Hillary won. But obviously, things are very bad right now. My point is there are other ways to get to him legally, and to use this as the prop, to use this as the tire jack. This Russiagate thing on Trump is wasting a lot of time. Look what just got passed. This huge trickle-up tax bill that's going to be signed, and everything else that is going on.
If you do have to show up down there.
I do have to show up.
Yeah.
So I do. I mean, if not, I'm held in contempt.
But why don't your lawyers ask if it can be a public hearing? Say my client will appear, but the public has to be allowed into it.
Well,
none of this
what's
closed
really
door
funny,
stuff.
that's a good question, because why is it that the IC guys like Clapper and Hayden, they get to do it publicly, but the people who are witnesses, people who are being charged, got to do it privately?
Eric Prince, the head of Blackwater last week.
Yes.
He testified behind closed doors. All we get is the trickle out of what witnesses say happened inside of the room.
Whatever they release, because there are no reporters in there. Whatever they release.
Right. So you could be in that situation then where they're going to be saying you said something and...
And just, you can take it out of context and you can drop it out. So I would insist that it would be public. That's one thing. And I have no idea what my response is going to be. Will I go behind closed doors and testify? Probably not.
Yeah.
That's my inclination.
Randy Credico, thank you for joining us on Intercepted.
Thank you.
Randy Credico is an activist, a comedian, a radio host, and now the recipient of a subpoena from the House Intelligence Committee as part of the Trump-Russia investigation.